Getting into chapter 1107 of One Piece, called I've Been Looking For You, starts out back with our favourite giants, Dory and Broggy, as they cheer each other on and shout for two other giants, Oimo and Kashi, who were first seen during Enies Lobby arc as guards. They are also on the ship with them and are ordered to sink every other ship they see. These two giants shout "Roger Captain" and get the rest of the crew all riled up, revealing an entire crew made of huge giants. And in this awesome double page spread, we see the giant crew rush into battle on the island, destroying everything in their wake. Dory and Broggy lead the charge, and marine announcements ring out over the island reporting the arrival of the giant warrior pirates, which have just made landfall. Other giants from the crew hop from ship to ship, destroying them all in one swing. Further up the island at the Labo Stratum, we see Usopp, Nami and Chopper staring down at the new commotion on the island. Usopp has his binoculars out and sees Dory and Broggy running across the island below them. He's immediately filled with tears and calls out "My masters," but he also asks what they're doing here, and Nami and Chopper also notice Oimo and Kashi, who must have gone to Little Garden and picked up their leaders. Usopp is relieved and states he was worried he might not have been able to see them at Elbaf. We then get a mini refresher on the giant warrior pirates and some new exposition, where it's explained that long ago the world was terrorized by two giant co-captains, but when they got in a quarrel their crew disbanded. Luffy and his crew then helped them out during the Little Garden arc, and then they met Uemo and Kashi, two crewmates who had set out to check on their captains. But if you are an astute One Piece fan, then you probably already knew all of that. But before we get into the rest of the chapter, if you're enjoying this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps my small channel grow. Also, I've made a Patreon and it's in the description below. Support me if you'd like. Edison states that the giants are really going at it on the Marines and is surprised that they know these Straw Hats. They must have also come to help them after hearing the news, and Usopp asks how that's possible, but Edison continues saying it must be all in the newspapers since the Marines gathered a ton of force for this operation. Usopp then says that they must have come to help them get out of there and they've got to finish their prep quickly. A phone rings and Brook is on the line telling them that him and the ship are close, still sliding on the ice. Brook jokes that although they're close they won't be able to stop for tea, and Lilith just hits him again saying that they're basically going so fast that they'll be fried if they fly off the edge. Lilith then gets on the call and asks them all to pay attention since they can't afford to dilly-dally. Jinbei, running through the bushes, says that they're all getting fired up and that they must be ready to leave at a moment's notice. And particularly, this isn't the time to be picking fights regarding Zoro, who is still fighting Lucci, but I am glad to finally get back and see what this guy is up to. Zoro seems to be out of breath, saying Lucci is strong, but he needs to wrap this up. And Lucci responds saying that only winners can talk like that, and since Zoro's crew is waiting for him, he's become a burden. Lucci then continues to taunt Zoro by saying that the crew will never make it out if they can't leave Zoro behind. But Zoro, unfazed, just points out that Lucci is talking as if he's the one in control of the fight. On another part of the island, the pacifistas fire off a beam, destroying yet another ship, while the Marines scramble around and announces that roughly 30 of their ships have been destroyed and continuing. The Vice Admiral, called Red King, demands that all smaller ships should be pulled back and lead instead with the big battleships. He calls it a pitiful sight and unable to believe that they have to fight their own weapons as he fires a barrage of cannons into a pacifista, destroying that one for good. Now that we've covered all of the other events happening on the island, we're back with Luffy and Bonnie's fight against Saturn. Luffy, still bouncing in the air, calls down to Bonnie and with a big smile, he asks her what's with the waterworks. She states that she's crying because she's been looking for him for so long, and in classic Luffy fashion, he says he's been there the whole time. She clarifies though that she didn't know he was Nika, but Luffy just responds, "What's a Nika?" and then insults her weak punch she made earlier. Bonnie states that she was trying to do an attack like Luffy and asks him if he'd show her how to do a better one and give Saturn a good punch for Vegapunk so they can get out of there. Luffy's eyes pop out at the sight of Vegapunk almost dying on the floor. An infuriated Saturn shouts that none of them have the right to live, but Luffy jumps in saying he's wrong and decides to agree to Bonnie's request. He winds up his attack saying that this is how you punch, But whilst he's doing that, Saturn uses his power on him and Luffy reels back spitting blood. Thankfully, it doesn't seem to affect him too much and he shouts Saturn is going to pay for hurting his friends. Then with a booming Dawn Gatling, he pummels his face. Saturn spits blood and Bonnie, Kuma and Vegapunk all seem pleased. Luffy continues to punch, sending Saturn flying into the building behind them. And Frankie asks Bonnie to get up and Atlas says that the hoverboot should still work on the island. They try to move Vegapunk, but he asks them to go on without him since he knows that if he moves, he'll die. Kizaru again suddenly appears and tells them that they'll be dead either way, and with his eyes closed, he prepares to fire at Bonnie. But Sanji, our goat, kicks away the beam, surprising everyone including myself, and Kizaru's face here is just golden. Frankie, in utter shock as well, asks how he kicked it since that was a freaking laser beam. Then Sanji says that light doesn't hold a candle to love, and oh no, you've ruined it, Sanji. Hopefully he's talking about Bonnie's love for Kuma and Vegapunk, not his own love. Kizaru then comments that if what Sanji said is true, they'll have to scrap the physics textbooks. Atlas and Frankie then carry the group away from the battlefield towards the northeast port, and Kizaru then rubs his head, saying he's in a real pickle now. All those left now are Sanji, Luffy, Kizaru, and the dying body of Vegapunk. Not a very good look, unfortunately. Kizaru says he'll have to at least bring back their heads, but Luffy just starts laughing, stating he'll have to write a letter of apology instead. But now where Saturn landed and is sat in the rubble, a familiar foot seems to walk towards him. That figure then says it's not every day you see one of the 5 elders in the dirt, and this figure is the BLACKBEARD crewmate who was teased many chapters ago, and it is in fact Katarina Devon. Finally, we now know who that was. She looks down at Saturn and asks him what kind of delicious power he has, as well as commenting how unheard of it is to have someone of his stature here on this surface. But it has also made their job a hell of a lot easier, and he gives him a tap on his leg. Then we see the second member of the Blackbeards that made it to the island, and it's none other than Van Alga. Saturn asks them what business they have here, but it is also surprised that a level 6 escapee from Impel Down would become a lackey for another captain. But she just says that Teach is special, and Saturn then says as is his lineage. Interesting, more mysteries to unravel. What is Teach's lineage? Katarina is surprised Saturn knows about that, but he just continues to ask what they hope to get out of these stunts. Van Alga then callously responds that what they want is the world. They stare at each other coldly, and Saturn tries to attack them with his foot, but using Van Alga's power, they warp away, leaving Saturn speechless and angry. At the edge of the island, Katarina asks why they couldn't have walked further away, but Olga says he hasn't mastered it yet. Then suddenly behind them, Caribou appears, begging for them to wait. He introduces himself and pleads with them to let them take him with them and meet Teach, since that's his idol and all he's ever wished for was to meet him. And the chapter ends there with an absolutely fantastic cliffhanger. So many notable things happen during this chapter that I'm just so excited to see. Dory and Broggy arriving to help the Straw Hats escape, the Straw Hats finally prepared enough to leave at a moment's notice, with poor Zoro still struggling against Lucci, and the Marines still fighting the Pacifistas. Luffy is finally fighting Saturn, and Sanji is Admiral level now, definitely going to be number 2. Also, Bonnie and Kuma have finally escaped, although I do think it's strange that they've just left Vegapunk lying on the ground bleeding out. At least get a doctor first, because I'm getting more and more worried by the second. But one of the biggest reveals is the Blackbeard crewmates that have arrived on the island, and also Katarina touching Saturn, which fans have speculated on this use. The devil fruit she has is the Inu Inu no Mi, which allows her to transform into a 9-tailed fox. But not only that, she can also transform into clones of people she can touch. So now with that power of Saturn, she can do some really scary things, as well as sneak into anywhere that requires a Gorosei's presence. Better watch out in the future, guys, since now we can't even trust who might be the real Saint Garcia Saturn. And finally, Caribou as well, who is begging to be on Teach's crew. I don't think he'll die because he has an incredibly useful power, and he also has so much useful information that Teach will definitely make use of. But we'll just have to wait and see. It's now coming to the end of the video, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. I'm so happy you stopped by. My channel is steadily growing, and I'm amazed at the support I'm getting. And I also have a Patreon now, so feel free to support me however you like. The link will be in the description, and I will shout out names at the end of each video. Thank you again, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.